Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, and this is my answers to your questions. आपके सवाल, मेरे जवाब. But before I get into answering your questions, do the needful. Subscribe to Conversations, like the video, ring the bell, and also think of sharing it with your friends. Please send me your questions about geopolitics, about America, about American foreign policy, about education, about the Muslim world, about India's relations with the rest of the world, about South Asia, about China. Whatever you think is interesting and has puzzled you for some time, do feel free to ask me that question. Stay within the realms of geopolitics, international relations, and I will try and answer your question through conversations. So keep in mind this particular email address, askprofkhan@gmail.com. I get a lot of comments, which I do try to engage with as much as I can. But if you put your question in the comments section, then I'm going to miss it, because when I decide to do a conversation to answer your questions, I go to that Gmail account, askprofkhan@gmail.com, and the questions that are there, I look at them and then I record my answers. So please send me your questions. Today, I have 5 questions that I will be addressing. The first question is from Adesh Patel, and he says, my name is Adesh Patel. I'm 20 years old, and he's pursuing an MA in history. He says, I always listen to your shows. My question is this: suppose Russia uses its small tactical nuclear weapons over Ukraine, how India will explain her position to the Western world, knowing it can move away from Russia for several reasons. And then he has 3 questions. Russia is a reliable and trusted partner. Russia has supported India on Kashmir every time and everywhere. And our defense relationship is very strong, and Russia is willing to invest in Make in India. So given all these wonderful partnerships that we have with Russia, can India turn its back on Russia if Russia uses the nuclear weapons? That's how I understand the question, Adesh. It's a very difficult question to answer. The foreign minister, Jaishankar, will be exactly 1 week from now in Moscow to meet his counterpart, Foreign Minister Lavrov. I'm not fully sure whether he will get FaceTime with Vladimir Putin or not. But I think this is exactly the issue that Jaishankar will be raising. And the message, I think, from Delhi to Moscow will be that if you do use nuclear weapons, then you're going to basically put a lot of stress, not just on India, but on any other country that is willing to say anything positive about Russia. Russia will become an instant pariah, especially if Putin were to use the nuclear weapon, even a small one, in a highly populated area, or causes some kind of infrastructure damage that immediately leads to large numbers of human fatalities. So basically, if he commits a crime against a large number of civilians, forget about the Western world. The question that we need to ask is, how will the Indian government face its own population? Do people of India have ethics, morals? Will they support a country that kills thousands of civilians? This is the first question I want to ask Adesh and others in India. Or are Indians going to say, oh, that's okay, he just killed 50,000 Ukrainians, that's all right with us, or 5,000 Ukrainians or 10,000 Ukrainians? If Indians care about human value, if Indians care about peace, then probably the Indian population itself will turn against Russia. Forget about what the Western world says. So that's one aspect of it. But if Putin uses the tactical nuclear weapon in such a way that it does not cause loss of life, but maybe somewhere in an isolated place, in order to pressure Ukraine to surrender, then in that case, India is going to have a really tough time, because I wonder what India is telling Western nations, which are meeting it and putting pressure on it to essentially condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine and also cut ties, especially stop buying Russian oil and also Russian weapons. So in that case, India is going to have a real tough time trying to explain to the rest of the world why India remains attached to an international pariah. And make no mistake, Russia will become a pariah state if it uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So I hope that answers your question, Adesh. But thank you very much for asking such a thoughtful question coming from somebody so young. I think you should, in your second year, focus on great power rivalries or also look at India's historical relationship with superpowers and then perhaps pursue a PhD in international relations. But all the best to you. Well, the next question is by somebody called Jay from New Jersey. So he probably lives within 100 miles of my house. And Aman Shukla of Amethi, UP, also has a very similar question. So basically, I'm answering both Jay and Aman. First of all, he says, I want to say that I really enjoy your videos as they are not only informative, but also intriguing. Thank you very much, Jay. Thus, I'm able to learn new things and build upon my current knowledge. That is the purpose of Khanversations, and I'm glad that you're benefiting from it. After India's defiance of US on Ukraine, we have seen tensions in the relationship. In fact, I would say. So basically, Jay is saying that that he has listed a series of actions taken by the United States and says that words are not important, but actions are. And so while America might say that India is important to America and has good relations with America, I will be soon posting an interview with a very prominent US senator in which he also says this is the case. But America's actions suggest that that is not true. And he identifies a list of actions, and I will actually go through them, and he labels these actions as anti-India. So number one, he says, Pakistan gets IMF loan. So, and then the second one is Pakistan secures $500 million, I think it's $450 million to service F-16s. And then he says that Pakistan exits FATF, then Pakistan gets a loan forgiven, and Pakistan and South Korea. So if you notice, all the actions that Jay identifies are US relations with Pakistan. None of these actions except two actions, one by the Germans, which I don't think I as an American would like to answer them, and I don't think that German foreign policy takes all its diktats from the US. So I'm going to leave that question about German actions out of it. So the only action that you're talking about is a large delay in visas for India alone. I think it's more of a procedural issue. I understand that in some cases it's taking more than 400 days. One reason could be that India has not yet confirmed a proper ambassador to India. Eric Garcetti's nomination is still stuck in the Senate. It is quite shameful for the US actually to say that India is an important country and not have a proper ambassador in Delhi. So that's one thing. The other thing is that if actions that America is taking are seen as anti-India, then some of India's actions, such as buying S-400s from Russia, not condemning Russia's violation of the UN Charter and attacking Ukraine, Russia's commitment of gross human rights violations, killing civilians, brutality in Ukraine, not doing that, India continuing to buy Russian oil in spite of America's insistence not to do that. Should we interpret all these actions of India as anti-US? So if you actually made a list, you will find that India has committed more anti-US actions using your paradigm, anti-US actions, than US has committed actions which are anti-India. From your list, it appears that only the delay in visas. But from the US perspective, India has not condemned Russia. India continues to interact with Russia. Jaishankar in Australia said that we will continue to maintain strong relations with Russia. India buys Russia's oil, and so on. At least here I've identified 4 anti-US actions by Russia. So if India and India and US have to become genuine defense partners, India never calls the US as its genuine defense partner. At least the national security strategy just released by the White House specifically calls India as its defense partner. So at least the United States, in terms of words, is more friendly, and in actions is less unfriendly than India is. So I think blaming the United States alone for not better relations between India and US is, I think, unfair to the United States. You must ask yourself, next question, is India also a reliable partner for the United States? So I hope that answers the question for Jay as well as Aman. Once again, thank you very much for sending your questions. I hope you found the answer. You may not like the answer, but I hope you found it intriguing, Jay, and we can continue the dialogue. The third question is from Naman Dixit. This is a very interesting question. Naman Dixit is an engineer in India, and he says, you have talked about an increase of conservatism in South Asia. I remember one example I remember was about many more Hyderabadi women wearing hijabs. You have explained this in terms of social media, linking people and spreading viral ideas around, as well as a sense of pan-Islamism in case of Muslims. However, could it not be that these surplus conservative people are actually those of lower rungs of society who have been economically and socially lifted up, but haven't yet fully shed their conservative identities? So the first question that Naman is asking is that the visible religiosity of Muslim women in terms of more hijab, say in a cricket match, if you look, could be because these hijab-wearing women have not started wearing hijab just now. It's just that they used to be poor, but and so they were invisible. And now that they are wealthy, or at least better off, they have become more visible. I guess you might have a point there, but we could go and look at data from way past and I'll look at it, and I'm not sure whether you will find that religiosity was such high. The religiosity among poorer segments of the Muslim community often is manifest in burqas, and I think the upward mobility is manifest in terms of hijab in some cases. And while both exist, I think you will find that the more cosmopolitan segment of the conservative Muslim community will be wearing hijab, and the less cosmopolitan might be wearing the burqa. So I'm not very sure that it is just economic empowerment that is making religiosity visible, but I actually think that there is a Middle Eastern effect which has increased religiosity, visible religiosity. I don't know whether people are in their hearts more religious or not, but they are more inclined towards conspicuous consumption of religious symbols and are willing to send religious signals on their social media and elsewhere. So that's my point. But a similar phenomena in Turkey was as a parallel where urbanization, so as more and more people from the rural areas started coming to cities in search of jobs, especially in the 1990s, you saw more hijabs and more conservative segments of the Muslim community of Turkey visible in their cities. And it was not because the people of the city were becoming more religious, it was that more religious people were coming into the cities. So increase in urbanization, increased visibility of religious symbols in Turkey, and which also translated into essentially more votes for the pre-runner to the current AKP party. And so you find that Erdogan then becomes the mayor of Istanbul on the backs of conservative voters who moved from rural areas into urban areas. So yes, in Turkey, that phenomena, your explanation is more applicable than I think to India. Your second question is interesting. In the past few years, we have seen some accommodational stances from RSS and BJP when it comes to Muslims. I'm not very sure there is any accommodation by RSS and the BJP, but most recently, as you point out, Mohan Bhagwat basically made a statement saying we should not look for a Hindu idol in every mosque and wanted to end this argument on tension.
अभी ये प्रकरण निकल रहे, ज्ञानवापी का मुद्दा चल रहा है. अब ऐसे मुद्दे हैं, एक इतिहास तो है, उसको हम बदल नहीं सकते. वो इतिहास हमने नहीं बनाया, न आज के अपने आप को हिंदू कहलाने वालों ने बनाया, न आज के मुसलमानों ने बनाया. उस समय घटा, ठीक है, प्रतीकात्मक कुछ हमारी विशेष श्रद्धा थी, ऐसे स्थानों के बारे में हमने कहा, लेकिन रोज एक मामला निकालना नया, ये भी नहीं करना चाहिए. हमको झगड़ा क्यों बढ़ाना है? ज्ञानवापी के बारे में हमारी कुछ श्रद्धाएं हैं, परंपरा से चलती आई, हम कर रहे, ठीक है, परंतु हर मस्जिद में शिवलिंग क्यों देखना?
And I think in one of his parliamentary statements, Narendra Modi, while talking about CAA, essentially accused the Congress of looking at Muslims as only Muslims, whereas he said, my party looks at Muslims as Indians. And so there is a distinction that he was trying to make. But these are verbal statements. I don't see any actions. I don't see the RSS condemning Pravesh Verma, who after Mohan Bhagwat's statement and his dialogue with Mr. Jung and his colleagues who went and met with him, has come out and condemned Pravesh Verma, who called for a boycott of the entire Muslim community, nor did he condemn the Hindu pundits or whoever the Hindu scholars and religious people are who called for a genocide of Muslims recently. I'm not talking about the Haridwar episode that happened last year. I'm talking about the episode that happened less than a month ago in Delhi with Pravesh Verma's, the meeting that Pravesh Verma was at. There were also calls for genocide for that. And there are other instances. For example, the call for converting Shamsi Jama Masjid into a temple. These are all things happening after Mohan Bhagwat issued the statement that let's not look at idols in every mosque. So I think that there has to be action followed by words, and there are also some demands he made with Muslims as to how Muslims should stop addressing non-Muslims as kafirs, especially Hindus, and I think Muslims should begin to have a dialogue internally to address these issues. So this is an important issue. Keep an eye on it, and we will see how it goes. I'm a very strong advocate of a Hindu-Muslim dialogue, an ongoing Hindu-Muslim dialogue, both in India as well as in the US. And I will be posting a conversation very soon on this subject. And we'll see how it goes. But Naman Dixit, thank you very much for asking this question. This is a very important question. I'm not sure whether I gave you a happy or satisfactory answer, but this is a question, the answer to which should come from a vast majority of Indians who care for India's democracy, for its secularism, for its pluralism. So the answer will have to come from Indians, not from one or two people, but from all of us. My next question is from Gaurav Aggarwal, who is originally from Delhi but lives in Abu Dhabi. He's been a very early supporter of Khanversations. So Gaurav, thank you very much. And this is his question. He says, thanks for all your work, and your Indian origins make us all feel proud, especially when we see the Indian flag along with the US flag on your desk. You can see it there. Now the question, the Russia-Ukraine war seems to be getting longer and tougher, and it seems in desperation, Russia has threatened the use of nukes. No matter how well Ukrainians do, Russia is too big to lose. Well, that is the question, really. Is Russia too big to lose? Apparently, a lot of people in America don't think so. They think this is a great opportunity to, at least I think that America thinks this is a great opportunity to defeat Russia, especially since Ukraine is now doing so well in its counter-offensive, and Russia's economy is going to suffer significantly, and its military apparently is not really as good as most of the world thought. And it's also running out of supplies. And it is also losing the land that it had gained, especially in the Kherson area. It's not performing reasonably well. So in this scenario, would it not have been better that Ukrainians had not resisted at all? I'm not very sure. It's fair to ask any country to not fight for its freedom. The Ukrainians did what the Ukrainians should do, and I think they have done an incredible job of standing up to a very powerful country with what meager resources they have, both in terms of people as well as weapons, as well as financial resources, of course, with a lot of help from the US and Western allies. But I think we should also try and hold Russia accountable for some of its actions. I understand that Russia feels that the eastern expansion of NATO threatens its security, but such a major act of trying to invade another country, I'm not very sure is wise, and now I guess it's going to backfire on Russia. And you will see that Russia may have nuclear weapons, and India may continue to buy weapons from Russia, but more or less, most of the world is going to slowly disengage from Russia, regardless of what happens in this war. My last question is from Kashish from India. He says, it's a very interesting question. He says he heard from a RAW member, RAW is India's intelligence agency, on some podcast or video, India doesn't have a single friend in the world. I'm not sure that that is accurate. India has very good relations with Russia, as India's foreign minister repeatedly tells us, and that Russia has never betrayed India, has stood up for India, supported India in every forum. And also in 1971, it was the Soviet Union which came to help India when the US Navy was threatening it. And so the successor state of Soviet Union, which is Russia, is essentially has a long history of being a pretty good international relations partner and a friend to India. It is also quite possible that we can now count Japan as a good friend internationally. Some of the regional countries in South Asia may be a good friend, such as Bangladesh, to a great extent, has very good relations. The US has extended a hand of friendship and partnership, strategic partnership. The close economic ties that US and India have, the people-to-people relations. There are 4 million Indians, people of Indian origin, who now live in the United States. So I'm not sure that that is an accurate description. But from a strategic perspective, it is quite possible that Indian national security thinkers use the Chanakya model, where Chanakya says that if you are this state, all states around you are your natural enemies. Every state that borders with you is your natural enemy. This is in the Arthasastra. But he also says that every state which is bordering this enemy state of yours then becomes your natural ally. So think of it in terms of rings. You are here in the middle, and then you have a ring of states around you, which are your natural enemies, and a ring of states around the ring of natural enemies who then become your natural friends and allies. So perhaps keeping that model, which these days a lot of Indian strategic thinkers invoke, it is quite possible that the raw agent was saying that all are in our immediate neighborhood, whether it is China or Pakistan, we don't really have a real good friend. But right now, India is proving to be a very good friend for Sri Lanka too. If you are further interested, you can go to my channel and search for my analysis of the Arthasastra. I have it in both Hindi and English, and you will find it very, very interesting. So Thank you very much for sending such interesting questions, and I'll be happy to answer them if you send me more. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Conversations and also tell your friends and relatives and people you engage with in social media about Conversations so that we can simply expand this dialogue. Thank you very much.